to you about is management systems, because that's what I've recently learned a lot about. So management systems effectively are there to control the risks of an organization. But when we talk about risk in general, or when we talk about controlling risks, the factor that we should always consider is opportunity, because everything comes with just not the risk but the opportunity as well. Everything that we do, anything that is there in our world and beyond, has a risk and an opportunity associated with it. So when we talk about, I'm driving, I'm going somewhere, I've got an opportunity that I'm going to get somewhere, but there's at the same time there's a risk as well. What is the risk? The risk is that I'll have to pay for the fuel. God forbid something might happen, but that still, despite of that risk being there, that still keeps me going, right? So what I mean to say is that when we've got to talk about risk and opportunities and doing something that comes with those risks and opportunities, we still have to do it. So what we do is that we keep the risk at an acceptable level and we harness the maximum opportunities out of it, right? So taking this point further at applying this perspective on the business activities, each business has got risks of its own, right? Each business has different risks associated with health and safety, risks associated with environment, risks associated with quality, right? And to counter each of that risk, the organization has a management system in place. A management system is what helps the organization to control that risk, right? So what, by definition, management system is a set of interacting and interrelating elements, blah 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 blah. But what I mean by this is that we've got to focus on the term interrelated and interacting, right? Both of these terms refer that when we talk about a management system, much is involved. When we talk about the management system, it's not only about the people, it's not only about the resources, it's not only about the management, it's not only about the structure, it's not only about the issues of the organization, it's not only about the capabilities of the organization, but it's about all of them, right? That's what a management system is, as per my understanding. So we've got different management systems to manage different risks. So what ISO does is ISO and other, for example, ANSI standards are, another type of standards originated from the US, and I've still got to learn more about that. I don't know much about ANSI, but similarly, like ANSI, like ISO, all of these bodies, what do? Is that they publish standards, right? When we talk about these standards, management systems are certified with respect to standards, right? And these standards contain the requirements. These standards are the set of requirements, right, that are used to, run the management system. To run the management system as per those requirements means that you can get the management certified, or let me put it another way. A certified management system with respect to a standard means that management system has been complying with all of the requirements that have been provided by the standards. So ISO publishes different standards, and of course we all of us know what those different standards are. These are, for example, the ISO 45001, for example, the ISO 14001. So these are standard, and these standards come from standards families. For example, ISO 45001 has 45001, 2, 3, 4 and 5, right? Now these families of standards contain different types of standards, mainly two. The two main types are type A standards and type B standards. So type A standards are standards like 14001, 45001, and they have those requirements based on those requirements, a management system is certified, right? So these are referred to as a type A standards. Type B standards, on the other hand, they're just guidelines. They are guidelines on how to improve your performance, how to implement or maintain good practices for good results. But the main type A standard is the standard with respect to which a management system is certified. 45001, 14001, we already spoke about it. These are some examples. And other than that, when we talk about type B standards, so 45002, 3, 4, 5, these are the type B standards. For example, 45005 gives us the guidelines on how to manage activities within the coronavirus. So these are not certifiable, right? And when we talk about certification is a process in which mainly three bodies are involved. Number one, accreditation body. So these accreditation bodies also play their part in development of the standard. So they sit on the same panel as the ISO, right? So they publish standards, and then they certify other bodies, and these organizations they sort of go ahead and certify other organizations' management systems. So for example, if you want to get your organization's management system certified, you'll have to go to a certification body, right? And that certification body would be affiliated with an accreditation body. So the certification body would come in and audit your management system. When we talk about audit, we talk about checking, right? When we talk about checking, there's two things that we need to keep in mind: what is being checked and what is it being evaluated against, right? So these bodies, they perform audits of the organizations, and then when they see that their management systems are complying with the requirements of the standards, their management systems, that would be the scope. The scope of their management system, whatever their management system is set for, is complying with the requirements of the standard, and hence we can certify it. So that all of this process is, as we know, is referred as an audit. Okay, so now coming back to the standard. A standard has different clauses, right? Clauses are the conditions of any agreement. Any sort of an agreement has different conditions, and since certification is an agreement that the management system is fulfilling the requirements of the standard, for this agreement there are certain terms and conditions, essentially those requirements themselves on the basis of which the management system is being certified, right? So these requirements are referred to as clauses. Like the standards that we know have two types, type A and type B. Similarly, these clauses also have been divided into two types. So overall, a standard has 10 clauses. Out of these 10 clauses, 3 of these are the non-auditable clauses and 7 of these are the auditable clauses, right? Non-auditable clauses only define the standard. They for every standard, if you need to get information for what the standard is about, you're going to get that information from the non-auditable clauses, clause 1, 2 and 3, right? So these non-auditable clauses, what are they? Number one is scope. What is the standard for? What does the standard want? For example, the standard ISO 14001, the scope of 14001 is that wherever you're going to implement it within the organization, you need to fulfill the legal requirements. Okay, you need to fulfill the compliance obligations. Compliance obligation refers to whatever the company has obliged itself to. Legal requirements were there in the first place. The company did not choose to, follow those requirements. The company had to follow those requirements. Compliance obligation, an organization chooses something to be its compliance obligation, right? For example, these requirements from the clauses that need to be met can be referred as compliance obligation, because as the organization is aiming for that certification, they have to fulfill the requirements. Similarly, clients' requirements can be considered as compliance obligations, right? And the other industrial standard if the organization is obliging itself to. Now, all of this is the base of their management system, right? We'll get to that in a while. So when we talk about these 3 non-auditable clauses, the first one is scope, that defines what the standard demands. What is the objective of the standard? What is the main goal of the standard? And clause 2 is about normative references, whether there is another document that you need to understand this one, right? I often give this example that, as per my understanding, of course, that a French novel needs to be read, right? You need to read a French novel, and for that to be able to read that, you need a French dictionary. But similarly, for the ISO standard, we do not have these normative references for some of these standards. That will be under discussion in the upcoming videos, of course. So if there isn't, it's been mentioned in the second clause. Now, what is the third clause about? The third clause is about terms and definitions. Now, these terms and definitions are about the terminology that has been used within the standard, that what does it mean? Because to understand the requirements, first of all, we'll have to read the requirements, of course, and when we read those requirements, we'll have these different documents, right, that we need to have, for example, or when we read those, I just lost my chain of thought. When we Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so when talking about these clauses, right, we're talking about these clauses. So the terms and definitions, they explain the terms and definitions that have been used, which you need to understand to be able to understand the requirements. Now, these are the first 3 clauses. These were the non-auditable clauses. Now come the auditable clauses, right? And the main difference between these non-auditable and auditable clauses is that the auditable clauses are specific to the organization. These clauses were specific to the standard, but the auditable clauses are specific to the organization. Now, these auditable clauses are, of course, 7 in number. From they range from 4 to 10, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So, as we're going to see that these clauses build up the management system slowly. First of all, they give you information about the scope of the standard. I mean, these standards, they are referred to, they have a structure, right? And that structure is referred to as the higher level structure, right? So this is the higher level structure, which means that these standards, first of all, define the clauses, right? Define the non-auditable clauses, and then they move on to the auditable clauses. And within the auditable clauses, they start up from the very basic of how you're going to build a management system. So this is the higher level structure that each ISO standard follows. And why do we need this higher level structure? Because of the high level structure, it's easier to integrate these standards. It's easier to maintain an IMS, for example, the integrated management system, in which you can account for more than one risk. So as we see, normally organizations have an IMS that manages the risk from health, safety, environment, even quality, right? So this is what we refer to as a higher level structure that helps us set up an IMS. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the auditable clauses. Auditable clauses, and you're going to see how the higher level structure is being exhibited by the requirements of the clauses. So these auditable clauses start off from the context of the organization, right? And what do we mean by the context of the organization? The context of the organization is an important thing to consider. Why? Because whenever we're planning to control risks, right, that is our aim. The aim of a management system is to control risks. So whenever we're trying to control risks, we need to see two things, right? First of all, we need to know what the risk is, and then the second thing is we need to see what our ability to control the risk is. And based on that, we decide that what level of risk would be acceptable, right? So we use this term basically ALARP, right? As low as reasonably possible. So what does that mean? That means that you've got to see what your capability in terms of controlling the risk is, how much of the risk can you control, and then you're going to see how much the risk is, and then you're going to decide on the acceptance of the risk, that okay, we're going to control this risk, and we have this opportunity. Of course, whenever we talk about risk, we talk about opportunities. So we'll see that for this risk we have this opportunity. So are we ready to risk ourselves this much, considering our ability to control the risk and considering the risk, right? So are we content with the maintaining the risk at this level while we harness this opportunity? So ALARP is all about balancing your risks and opportunities, and you've got to consider most importantly the risk and your ability to control that risk. So that's what essentially a management system is about, right? So therefore, the auditable clauses, because it's a high level structure, now the first thing that the management system is going to do is about realizing what their capability to control the risk is and how much the risk is itself. What is the opportunity and what are the risks, right? So this essentially is the planning phase of the management system. I forgot to talk about the PDCA cycle, but that's another concept, so we'll gradually move on to it. But it should have been explained before we start discussing about these clauses, so why not now? The PDCA cycle is a cycle that aims for continual improvement. The main objective of the PDCA cycle is continual improvement, because you cannot harness 100% efficiency. By that, what we mean is that an organization, a business, has to run its processes, right? So what is the process? A process is transforming the inputs into outputs, right? And how do we know whether a process is efficient? We look at the conversion of the inputs to outputs, and we see how much of our inputs have been lost, or how much have we gained from those inputs. All right, so we talked about the higher level structure. We spoke a bit about the auditable and the non-auditable clauses. And we also discussed that the auditable clauses are specific to the standard, right? Specific to the organization, right? When we talk about it being specific to the organization, we go back to the concept of managing risk, right? And when we're managing risk, it is important for us to know about two things: what the risk is and what is our capability to manage that risk. And when we talk about the capability of managing the risk, then we see that what issues are we faced with when we are trying to control the risk. So basically, context of the organization is to make the management system make the management system more specific to the organization, because as per the standard, what we're discussing right now is building up a management system, and we're building up a management system following the higher level structure of the ISO. That is the approach that we're going to consider when we're trying to interpret the requirements of the standard. So first of all, this standard asks or requires from the organization to understand its context, what the context of the organization is, right? And the context of the organization, of course, is what is affecting its ability to control the risk, and where is that risk originating from, and how much would that risk harm if that risk is exposed. So let's do what? Let's consider our ability to control the risk. Let's consider how much the risk is, and also let's consider that at what level do we think it would be reasonable. And what do we mean by that? At what level do we think that taking the opportunity is worth the risk, right? So when we talk about clause 4, context of the organization, so clause 4 is all about this, right? And we'll discuss the PDCA cycle inshallah at another time. That is the basis of the higher level structure. This higher level structure has been based on the PDCA cycle, and that's another discussion. But so the clause 4, we're talking about clause 4, context of the organization. So when the organization has to determine that what is really affecting its ability to control the risk and where the risk is coming from, first of all, the standard asks us to identify the internal and external issues of the organization. When we talk about the internal and external issues of the organization, these are the issues that are hindering the organization from controlling the risk. These are the issues due to which the organization needs to control the risk. Otherwise, everything is an opportunity for the organization, right? So what you have to do, you have to compromise on some of your opportunities with respect to what? With respect to the risk and your ability, most importantly, to control that risk. So when you're setting up the context of the organization, that is, of course, we're referring to clause 4. So clause 4 has then 3 sub-clauses, which we refer to as 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and 4.4. 4.1 is about understanding the internal and external issues of the organization, and 4.2 is about the interested parties, the people who might be affected by that risk. Because when you're considering the risk, when you are trying to see that at what level is the risk acceptable, you're trying to see that at what level your interested parties, all of your stakeholders, would be satisfied with it, right? So that is how you're trying to balance the risk. So to balance the risks, first of all, you need data on both of these things, that what is affecting our ability to control the risk and what level of risk is acceptable and where actually is the risk originating from, right? Because again, when I say that everything has a risk, of course, in that perspective, interested parties, the internal, external issues, all of these have then again risks of their own. But I partially don't know what I'm talking about, but it is what it is. So that's what clause 4 basically is about, context of the organization. So the basic requirement of clause 4 is that the organization should establish their scope for their management system. Now, when we talk about the scope of the management system, we're referring to 3 things: areas where the organization's management system is going to be applied to. What are the areas on which you're going to apply the management system? What functions are going to be covered within the management system? Because to effectively manage those risks, your organization's functions must be streamlined. I would use that term because, for example, when we talk about health and safety or managing or essentially any risk, right? You need to train your people for that risk. You need competent people for that risk, right? Who's going to do that? The human relations is going to do that. They're going to make sure that competent people are being hired. They're going to make sure that whatever needs to be communicated to them or how they need to be trained, they're going to analyze that. The equipment that you're using, supply chain or procurement, mostly supply chain, needs to make sure that all of those tools, those equipments are safe. And because for that equipment to be safe, you have to again make sure. And how do you make sure of that before buying that? And who buys that? The procurement department significantly is involved. So that also should be covered within the function. Similarly, when we talk about procurement or supply chain, both of them, then again you're going to employ contractors. When you're going to employ contractors, their risk is your risk, so you need to manage them as well. So of course you need to select the best possible contractor. You'll have different procedures, so then again it is concerned more with the procurement or the supply chain function. And of course you're going to manage the risk from your activities, and for that your operation department is the one that is really responsible for it. So, or when we say responsible, we also talk about accountability. So they have the control, and of course they're going to run those processes, so they need to be responsible for it. So we were talking about the scope. So scope is made up of these three things. Number one, the functions that we talked about, that will be included within the scope of your management system, and the internal and external issues that you're facing, right? You're going to write them down, you're going to document them, as ISO says. So when we talk about 4.2 interested parties, what are you supposed to see? You need, first of all, you need to identify who those interested parties are, right? An interested party is a stakeholder who is going to be affected by that risk that you want to control. Essentially, that the risk that you're trying to control is according to the needs and expectations of those interested parties, right? And some of those interested parties can be workers, your client, the enforcement agencies. So you need to know what their requirements are, and you need to know which one of their requirements is also a legal requirement. So by knowing what their requirements are, and by already having a knowledge about the legal requirements, you put them together and you term these as compliance obligations. When we talk about the environmental management system, so these are your compliance obligations, or these are your legal requirements and other requirements, right? So this is how you establish the scope of your organization. First of all, you need to have all of that to establish what this management system is intended to do. You already know that. You already have set the objective that, okay, we're going to control the risk. But now the auditable standard has started making this more specific. And to start with, you know what your ability to control the risk is, you know where the risk is coming from, and you know that at which level can you maintain the risk while harnessing that opportunity, or what opportunity would you be okay with versus the risk that is exposed. And of course, again, that depends on your ability to control the risk and your external relations, etc. So what the high level structure has done now is established the basis for your management system, that okay, your management system needs to operate based on this scope, right? This is the first. Now what you really have to plan for is for controlling those risks, but that's later. I'm referring to clause 6. But the build up for the clause 6 is going to be extracted from the information collected here for the scope. So those are the first three sub clauses of clause 4, and subsequently we've got another clause 4.4, which inshallah we'll talk about another day. And have a good day, guys.